Infinite Shaman is a very powerful deck from this new set, The Great Dark Beyond. I did do a previous video on Infinite Shaman if you'd like to check it out before, but this is my more refined version in addition to showing how I got rank 4 using this deck. The idea behind the deck is you want to have Fizzle, and you want to use Triangulate with Fizzle in your hand, and then when you only have 3 spells left in your deck, you want to use Triangulate onto the snapshot to be able to then go infinite using those. You want to have as little cards in your hand as possible. In addition, you want to make sure that you have Ceaseless, Expanse plus Raynor. And other cards that you can have in your hand too with it is Shudder Block and Incindius, because those can help with increasing your damage output against opponents, and also with Raynor, your defensive capabilities too. Cards that you want to mulligan for in this deck is Starport, Liftoff. In aggressive matchups, you want to use Defense Crystal. And in control-y matchups, you want to have Triangulate so you can get the second liftoff for your matchup as well. You'll notice that in quite a lot of my games that I do end up playing, I don't actually do the infinite combo, especially in this video that I'm showing here, just because although you do win out by grinding, you can quite often win just by out-tempoing your opponent using the minions that you get on board. Obviously, the worst of the Starship pieces is the Medivac. So if you have Medivac, and quite a few of them as well, you want to make sure that you're not falling into that trap. You'll notice just as in this gameplay footage that I used Hex onto the Defense Crystal of the Shaman. I found that to be very powerful in most of the Shaman matchups, so I regularly, if I have Thrall's Gift, I use just Hex onto their Defense Crystal because it reduces down a lot of their defensive capabilities. Because it reduces down the 6 armor from that, and then any future Starships they get through Raynor. So it's always quite powerful doing it in that way. They ended up playing down Fizzle here, so they've got a snapshot already in their hand, but usually I find the best snapshots are the ones where you don't have heaps of cards in your hand, and they've got 6 cards currently in their hand, so it's probably not going to be that strong. And it's not something that I'd really worry about too much, just because of the fact that, they probably do still have the Ceaseless, they probably have Triangulates in their hand as well, but if they're trying to go infinite, they won't have particularly excellent cards in their hand too. So this is a matchup where I'm looking to go quite aggressively into them, because it's them using that shows that they more than likely have the Ceaseless, Expanse, Raynor plus Triangulates in their hand and some other card. So I opted here just to go quite aggressive into them and to get my minion obviously onto the board to make sure that I'm dealing with them. You'll notice that previously I used Triangulate to get liftoff. I've found quite powerful, so I have switched to having a second Triangulate, because when you get liftoff, you're able to use it multiple times in a row. It gets you more Starship pieces, but it also is drawing through a lot of the cards in your deck, and it helps you get access to things like Lock-On, Missile Pod, obviously the Starship pieces, and it gets you your Raynor eventually too. So once you put the 5 liftoffs being available, so the 2 plus the Triangulate 3 makes 5, you generally have enough access to all the cards in your deck using all of those. So that's what I found to be quite useful in terms of the matchup that's here. So they've ended up using a pop-up book, so it's quite obvious that they are going for a Thrall's Gift sort of play here. So I do use the Missile Pod to make sure that, the Bloodlust play, to make sure that I am obviously clearing the board, because if they did use Bloodlust, it would be very threatening towards me. And right now I just need to decide whether to launch the Starship or to use my Defense Crystal. I opt to use the Defense Crystal, and I just reduced down the Marine to 1. That was a misplay. It would have been better using the Lock-On and the Marine, so it would already be dead with my Missile Pod, but it's fine. Like, that's just something that you need to think about when in future play of your games. Having the Defense Crystal on the board as well means that I'll be able to defend quite well into them. This, I believe, is a misplay that they did the Bloodlust. They should have used Hex on that, because if they had used Hex, it would have done a similar sort of amount of damage. Because I did heal the 6 damage, and obviously they lost a minion from that as well. So and now I get access to that defensive ability later in the game as well. So if you are in this sort of matchup, you always want to make sure if you have the Thrall's Gift, you use Hex rather than you using Bloodlust. I do use another Missile Pod here to make sure that I am able to take out their wide board that's here, and I want to obviously take out the Defense Crystal. It also, by trading into those ones, it means that I can launch my Starship to definitely clear the minions that they have on their board. Obviously, I need to make sure that I want to have the major advantage going into the match, so it's important that you are doing your clearing that you need to. So launching my Starship does mean that I'm in a significant advantage, especially since I've got the 1814 Starship available in my pool for Jim Raynor. It, at the moment, since it doesn't have any Raven in it, it means it can be quite easily hexed, which they're going to be doing now. So that obviously does reduce the amount of armor that comes from the Defense Crystal proc that would be there. But with that being said, it's not too much of an issue for me because although they got rid of my although they got rid of the Defense Crystal in the pool, I still do have the 7 damage one. And now I'm just looking and thinking about the minion that I had, the Starship that I had, and I'm just looking because with the deck tracker app, you're able to see all the Starship pieces that you put into your deck, and you can count how much damage you're obviously going to be doing through that. So I end up just using Ceaseless Expanse first, and then I use the Starship afterwards because I do have enough access to mana. It was quite unlikely that I would miss lethal even if I just used the Starship first, but if the 5 damage hadn't hit face, I wouldn't have had lethal that turn. So going into this match, I'm playing against a Druid. So quite often Druids are either going to be Dungar or the Hero Power Druid. In a matchup where it's Dungar, obviously the better matchup is to have Triangulate because then you can use it for your lift off and get heaps out at the same time. If you're playing against a Hero Power Druid, you don't want to have Triangulate because it's quite a slow card to be using, and they can obviously go quite aggressive with Hero Power Druid. You'll notice that I coined into Starport. Starport is one of the strongest cards in the deck. It's one of the highest win rate cards in the deck as well. So the quicker you get access to that card, the better you are in terms of winning. So I just use my 2 Starports here in the first 2 turns. So I've got quite a decent setup now going into this match. So because of them playing Malfurion's Gift, it's quite likely that they're going to be playing Dungar. So my matchup, I need to be considering those sorts of options that are here for it. So right now I'm just deciding whether to play the Gold Pen or the Triangulate. Unfortunately, I don't hit the lift-off here, but I do get Thrall's Gift, which is also quite useful in this matchup as well. Thrall's Gift, because you can use it to hex, you can use it on things such as Thunderbringer or Splitting Space Rock to be able to clear those minions without them getting the extra buff or the extra proc off. So yeah, I do choose the Thrall's Gift as my secondary option pretty much in any other matchup. So if I don't get lift-off, which is generally the card you want to get, I get Thrall's Gift. Or Pop-Up Book is in very niche circumstances, but it's more so just to push that extra 2 bit of lethal damage. So you'll notice they just played down the Thunderbringer, so I can use my Thrall's Gift here to be able to use the Hex onto the Thunderbringer. I can then trade into it quite easily, and then I can go face. So it's important when you are thinking about your matchup that you're thinking about how you're going to win out in terms of specific plays. So like obviously they didn't get access to Dungar, but them getting the +9 shows that they have Dungar in their hand. So now I need to be considering how I'm going to beat that Dungar turn that they're going to have. So I play down my Gold Penner because I'm going to need access to more cards, and then I put down more minions onto the board. This allows me to be able to potentially push some lethal damage in the following turn if I draw into a Thrall's Gift. Since there's 3 in my deck now because of the Triangulate, it is possible that I could have drawn into it, so that's the reason why I went for that sort of play. Unfortunately, I miss it. In terms of this sort of matchup here, you want to make sure that you're not attacking to the Splitting Space Rock, especially the first one if you don't need to, because once it dies, it becomes the same size minion, but there's 2 of them, so it's not really worthwhile in general attacking into a Splitting Space Rock, unless you can like silence it or clear it easily, or it's useful in terms of if you need to be able to use it into a Ziliax. So they just used their Dungar just then, so it obviously got them some of their best minions they can. They got the Ziliax, which is one that's more scary than not. They also got their beast, the Stargazer. Yogg isn't too much of a concern at the moment for me because I don't have a Starship out. If I did have a Starship out, it would have been a concern, but yeah, I don't have one out at the moment, which is quite good for me. So they end up just trading into my Shudder block with their Ziliax, and then just going face with their damage that they have. So obviously it is a decent amount of damage that's going face to me, but I still do have access currently to my Starship. I have liftoff, I have those sorts of things. I end up using the the Starpiece, the missile pod, to be able to take out the Yogg, and I also do the defense crystal at the same time, just in case it's possible that I have the extra push towards the extra push to get the AoE cleared for their 4/4s. But I end up launching my Starship here. Ends up it ends up clearing the board. In hindsight, it probably was better just using the Starship first and then using the missile pod, because it would have, in that situation, cleared the Ziliax. But I didn't know for sure that I was going to get poisonous, but it would have been better, like, even because there was no other player I really did in that turn. So in that turn, I should have gone for the missile pod rather than the I should have gone for the missile pod after the Starship, because I had shudder block in effect at that point in time. So they end up just drawing a card. It's showing that their board's also quite weak. So they use a trail mix, so it's not too much of anything for me. And then they end up just dealing some face damage to my missile pod. So I'm currently sitting in a relatively decent position. If I launch the Starship, I can clear their board. I could, in this situation, always just hold for a turn because of the fact that they aren't really able to push too much damage, but that then pushes them being able to use Forbidden Fruit for free. So I do make sure, obviously, that I am doing a play. I play down the SCV to reduce down the cost of my Starship, and I'm just thinking right now of what my particular play is going to be next. So having the Defense Crystal, I can access to it, and then I can use the Lightning Storm to clear most of their board. It will just leave them with the 2/1/1s. So I'm just going to need to watch out for the rest of the game things. I need to look out for one more Stargrazer, 2 Hydration Stations, and 1 more Splitting Space Rock. But because I've got this sort of setup, I'm getting to the point where I can clear the board quite easily, since I do have access to my Ceaseless Expanse. So as long as I keep a relatively decent high health total, I'll be able to win this matchup just through attrition. Because with the Fizzle plus Ceaseless Expanse combo, you can just, with very little cards in your hand, you can just pop it over and over to be able to take up the enemy's board. You just need to have enough access to health to be able to deal with them. So they end up using their first Hydration Station, and then they just go face with the damage coming from Stargrazer and then the 2 other minions. So it's a little bit of chip damage onto me considering my health, but I do need to obviously make sure that I'm keeping a close eye on the health totals and things like that. I use Triangulate here because I don't think that I'm going to need to be able to go for big plays, but also I do need to get access to the Jim Raynor relatively soon. Yeah, with Jim Raynor, obviously it makes the game a lot easier. And right now I'm just deciding how I'm going to be able to deal with their minions and things like that, because although I've got a decent board, I do need to make sure that I'm clearing everything that I can. I use the lock-on that minion, so then I can get access to the Ceaseless Expanse, because the lock-on's 1 card, and then them attacking into each other's 1 card. And then I use the Ceaseless Expanse just to clear their board, and then I launch the Starship. This is just to obviously set up for the future Jim Raynor turn, because since I've already used one of their Hydration Stations, I don't really need to go infinite in this situation, because I also don't currently have access to Fizzle, and I'm still quite a few cards away from it too. And I also obviously don't have the Triangulate that's here in my hand either, because I used it for the liftoff. Yeah, so my idea behind in that play was to make sure that I did get access to the liftoff, since I did get my Titan as well. And then I can use the liftoffs to be able to get me my last of my Terran cards. So I draw into my Fairy Garden Forest right now, and I play down my Titan before I use my liftoff as well, just so then I can get the mana discount, the 3 mana discount. It will allow me to use the liftoff a second time in this turn, as well as having access to the Titan hero power, the Titan power. And using the Titan power means that I can clear the 8/8. The idea behind that is I wanted them to be able to do as little damage as possible. Obviously, they still do have Ziliax, but it reduces their damage output significantly, because they also didn't get access to the extra 8 damage coming from it as well, which means that I'll be since I got the Jim Raynor in my hand, I'll be in a very decent position going into future turns to be able to take them out using my Jim Raynor. So they end up just going damage into my face and trading into my Titan. Obviously, it's better trading into the Titan in that situation because I'd be able to deal 3 damage to the board otherwise. I am just going to trade into their minions first, so I'm just deciding which ones to trade first. I don't think it particularly matters too much which way I trade, but the most important part is that I am obviously clearing the minions as best as possible for them. I think that the 2-1 probably should have gone into the 8-8, the Medivac should have gone into the 8-8, because I do obviously still have access to the Starship that's there. But what I'm thinking about right now is if I can just get away without using the Jim Raynor this turn, since they still could potentially have some sort of play to come back against me. Because you don't want to just use your hero when the board's not that scary in particular to you. But in hindsight, it would have been better doing the no Fairy Garden, using the Shudder block, trading the minions more effectively. So one goes into the Ziliax to get rid of it out of Reborn, and then just do the rest of the rest of the Jim Raynor hero. Because it would obviously cleared that Stargrazer that's there as well. Since I do have Reborn, I'm not in too bad of a situation, but yeah, that was a little bit of a misplay there. It's something that I could have improved upon. They end up just trading into my Jim Raynor. They end up just trading into my Starship, and then I think they grab a swipe with that, so then they can trade into the 6-8 as well. It obviously does help them with being able to clear the minions that are there too. And since they've only got 3 cards left in their hand, I do have a significant advantage considering I still do have access to Starship pieces. I've got nearly 60 health. I've got liftoffs. I'm doing fairly decent in terms of this situation that's here. And I believe they'll end up conceding relatively soon too. So I'm just thinking right now whether to use my Cactus Cutler to draw another card out of my deck, or to just swing into or to use my hero power first. And I end up playing down the Cutler eventually, just to get it out of my hand. It allows me to draw another Thor's Gift as well, so then I can use it for Bloodlust if I need to. Obviously I still have the other one, and they end up conceding. Okay, so going into this matchup, I'm playing against a rogue. Quite often the rogues that I've been playing against have been weapon rogues, so the way that I mulligan for this is for weapon rogue. I get rid of the SCV simply because I have access to the Starport and also a draw 2 drop. So I end up using the coin here, and I play down my Starport because Starport is the highest win rate card in the deck, and then I just pass. So having the 2-1 on the board obviously is quite decent. It means that I have extra push towards them. They obviously have to trade into it too. This does somewhat reveal that it's not going to be a weapon rogue if they're trading, because quite often with weapon rogue you do want to go face. But I end up just making sure that I end up just using the defensive totem just in case. They end up just trading their weapon into me, which is definitely showing now that they're not a weapon rogue, as well as the dig for treasure not getting the pirate, because with weapon rogue they do have access to those pirates quite easily. I end up just using my liftoff and then just passing over to them. So I've got 2 Starships on the board. I'm sitting in a relatively decent position, especially with 2 Banshees on the board. 2 Banshees are accessible as well. So I just play down my Starport. Once again, it is going to be one of the better cards in any matchup. It gets me another Banshee, which is fantastic for me. Obviously, with Rogue, a lot of the time they're not going to have wide boards. And right now I'm just thinking of what the best minion is to play down. I end up just putting down the Gold Panna. I don't think it really mattered if it was Gold Panna or if it was Needle Totem. I don't think it was too relevant. Obviously, it played well into the fact that they have the Void Ray to be able to trade into it, but I honestly don't think I would have played. It wouldn't have really mattered too much to me either way. It does obviously get rid of their defense crystal, their divine shield, so it is important in this situation. But I don't think that I wouldn't have corrected anyone if they had chosen the opposite play to that anyway. I end up just trading my 2-1 into the Void Ray to obviously get rid of it from the board, and I'm just thinking of how I'm going to best sort out my turn. So with them playing the Scoundrel, it's quite likely they're playing Protoss Rogue. So I need to make sure that I'm dealing as much damage as possible. I launch the Starship here. It gets me the extra 7 armor, but it's also dealing 15 damage to their face. And it leaves them with just 7 health, so I'm sitting in a really decent position going into next turn. They use the Dark Templar, which I do need to make sure that I clear, because obviously they can use it to clear quite small minions. I launch the Starship, which gives me a 2-1. And I just use the Triangulate here to get the Thrall's Gift. Because with Thrall's Gift, I can use the Lightning Storm to be able to clear the Dark Templar they have. It means that they won't have access to their Archon, or whatever it's called, for the following turn. They played out their Scoundrels, so they'll be able to get... They're obviously building up to quite a big Scoundrel turn. Quite a big Sonya turn, which is something that I do need to be watching out for. They use the Deafen on the Starship piece, just obviously so then they don't take extra damage from it, because if I launch that Starship piece along with Jim Raynor, it would be very, very easy to get the last 7 damage pushed. I get a lift off off the top, which is quite good, and then I also get Missile Pod and Lock On, which can help me trade into their minions. I put it onto the 4-3, since with my Jim Raynor in a future turn anyway, I'll be able to clear it, and also the 2-1 and the 1-3 can clear the 3-4 as well, since I've already used Missile Pod. So that's the reason why I traded in terms of that. Like, having 4 health and 3 health is something to think about if you can't clear both of them, but since the next turn I'll be able to clear them anyway, I do just go for the trade like that. They end up putting their hero power onto one of their Protoss minions, and then they end up obviously just doing some trading because they don't want me to be pushing any more face damage towards them, especially if I do have access to Jim Raynor, which is quite likely considering the amount of liftoffs that I've used against them. Then they just trade and then go face with the 3-4. I top deck a Thrall's Gift, which isn't too much of a, too important for me. I use the Cutler to get another Thrall's Gift, and right now I'm just deciding what my best play is going to be. I put down the Totem, so I'm just trying to draw cards and chill a little bit this turn, just because of the fact that I don't particularly have any sort of strong play. And I'm also right now thinking of how I'm going to get my Starship out, because if I get a second Starship out, it means that it's quite likely I'll be able to take them out using the Jim Raynor, because I do have the AoE plus the extra damage push that comes from it too. They end up just using the Needle Totem and the Gold Panner, and then they use their Scoundrels, so this obviously signifies that they're going to be doing their big play of getting all their extremely big minions out onto the board. They do, I believe, have access to a few cover artists as well, and they do the trade there. Although it misses a little bit of damage, they do that trade so then they can get their board wider using their cover artists and then their other minions. They play down their second High Templar, which deals 2 to me. Obviously, it gets them the big dude. And then they end up playing down their Scoundrel and another cover artist in a moment onto the 8-8. And then they play down their other one that they just got from the cover artist. So they end up missing 3 damage doing it that way, which isn't too much of an issue for them. Like, I don't think that it really mattered. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't have caused lethal on that turn otherwise. I end up drawing into my Thunderer, so right now I need to think of if I'm going to be clearing the board or if I'm going to be going face. Jim Raynor obviously has quite a few minions inside of it, so I end up looking at the Jim Raynor, what's inside it, and I just use it. And I set the pop-up book just to go towards their face, just to see if I do end up getting lethal. The hits from it ended up being quite good for me, especially with the 3-4 going first before the 8-4. If it had been the other way, it would have obviously not turned out as well in that situation. So I did get quite lucky in terms of where those minions ended up landing, and that ends up being the game for it. So that was a little bit of luck behind that. So yeah, they played really well considering, and I drew decently considering as well. So now I end up going into a Mage. So with Mage, they're quite often using the Protoss Mage, so I need to be making sure that I'm keeping my health above the Colossus damage. So that's something that I'm considering while I'm doing this. They also aren't too aggressive in terms of their damage, so I am looking in that situation for things like Lift Off, Triangulate, those sorts of cards to be able to get me more access to more of my cards in my deck. And I want to be applying quite a bit of pressure towards them as well. They end up playing down a Miracle Salesman here, so it is going to have Skylar with it too. I play down my Cutler and then just pass. I do have Liftoff access for next turn. I don't think there's really any card that I would play in the future turn either. So it's best in this situation just to use the Liftoff, because Liftoff is one of your win more cards as well. I was considering doing the Starport so I could get access to the cards a bit quicker for it, but not using as much mana. You want to be trying to use your mana most effectively and getting the most out of your mana, so that's the reason why I went, obviously, for the Liftoff. It does get you the 2 extra cards too. And they end up just trying to deal face damage towards me as well, so now with my play, I need to be thinking of how I'm going to be dealing with the minions that are here, so I just use the Starport. I just use the lock-on plus the missile pod to clear the 3/4. It gets it cleared, and then it obviously gets a minion into my pool. And it makes sure that my next Starship is going to cost not very much as well. So I have access to, potentially threatening sort of situation for them. They end up using their spell onto my missile pod. So at the moment I have 3 damage in that missile pod. I end up playing down the Cutler first just to see what I end up getting from it. Because if I don't have to use the Starship, it's a bit better. But if I do, it's not the end of the world. I played on the Starport first, so I can get access to see what card it is. I don't think it would have really mattered too much if I didn't use the Starport, but it doesn't particularly... it's better to have more knowledge of your turn rather than not. I think I still would have gone for the same sort of play for it. Then playing Artanis down means that they can deal some more face damage to me. So it's important in this situation that I am trying to keep my health total a bit higher. So I do need to make sure that I am trading into these minions as well. Because if I don't end up trading into them, or if I don't end up dealing with them, it means that I won't be able to... it means that I could potentially take a bit more damage than what I need to. So I trade my two damage minions, and then I deal 3 damage to face. Obviously, it's trading most effectively into those, but it means that if they did trade into my defense crystal, obviously it would reduce down their damage quite a lot. They end up using a hallucination here, so I wouldn't have been able to take out that minion anyway. I could have used the pop-up book for that, but in general, it's better, obviously, putting the defense crystal into the pool than not. Right now, I'm just deciding how best I'm going to deal with the minions here. Since I've got a 2 damage minion in the pool, it means I can very easily use the Starship to be able to clear the minions that are there. And right now I'm just deciding whether to... I was deciding whether to use the pop-up book onto my 2/1, which would then obviously put potentially a stronger minion into the pool to be able to clear them. And also to give better buffs to my Starship. I don't think it really would have mattered too much doing it in terms of that. It would have obviously made it a little bit bigger, but it's... the rush minion, I wasn't really expecting to be playing down the sunset volley as well. So yeah, it would have, in hindsight, probably been better, because it would have meant there would be a bigger minion that would be in front of that rush minion, so I wouldn't have had to clear it using my Starship or my pop-up book or things like that. But in reality, I don't think it really mattered too much, just because you want to play based on your understanding of the deck that you're playing against, and my understanding was I didn't assume for them to have this sunset volley in their hand. So I end up just trading, obviously, into those minions to make sure I clear. I get another wide board of Starship pieces, which is going to be quite useful going into the match. And once again, I am making sure that my health total is a relatively decent high amount, just in case of the Colossus. So with the following turn, I do need to make sure that I am getting my my Starship launched, because I do need to make sure that my health is staying at a reasonable sort of size. So I draw into my cards, obviously. I do hit one of the bombs, unfortunately, and I just get my defense crystal. I hit 2 of my minions into the 3/4 just to be able to clear. I'm also deciding right now how I'm going to best play the turn. Using the Gym Raynor means that I do get access to more armor, so that's the idea behind it, because if they did have access to a Colossus, it would have potentially been very threatening towards me. And by doing this, it means I get my armor significantly higher by playing down the Gym Raynor. And since I have a Ceaseless expanse, they don't really generally have two easy ways to be able to clear it. They end up using their Colossus here, so it does obviously clear my board. It leaves me still with 18 health, so I do need to make sure that I am getting my health back to a reasonable sort of amount. I do have the Fizzle in my hand as well now, so that means that I can get access to the somewhat infinite combo with the Ceaseless expanse. But I end up just opting to use the lift off to be able to get the extra minion pressure on the board. And then I use my Ceaseless expanse. I'm just thinking about whether to use my Ceaseless expanse to put more minions in the pool, or just to be able to go face using this Starship. The Starship that I have there is pretty decent, and the other minions wouldn't really be adding too much to that pool anyway. And the thing that I need to consider too is if I put into that Starship, it's quite possible they would have a Colossus going into next turn anyway. So they end up using Bob, which doesn't really matter too much towards me, since I do still have the Ceaseless in my hand. And then they use their spell to obviously get more cards. And then they pass, because that was the last of their mana they have access to. Being able to access the Ceaseless expanse means that I can obviously clear this board if I need to. I do get access to the Titan as well, so that's quite a good pull for me too. Because I still do obviously have the taunts that are there on the board. I have Triangulate in my hand as well, which can be quite useful. I use the Titan power to deal AoE plus also heal. And then I play down my Triangulate because it's not going to be an infinite game this game, because of the fact that they are quite low on health, and also I need to be making sure I'm keeping a close eye on my health total the entire time. Because if at any time they get access to a Colossus, they basically are going to win. So I just need to push as much damage as possible while also making sure the board is clear. The reason why I use the Titan rather than the Ceaseless is because obviously I wanted to heal back up more of the health, and they couldn't just do a Colossus play onto me. They use Lord of the Skies to be able to clear my 8/4. And then they're using their Chalices to deal more damage. I think this ends up getting a full clear. So they keep using their Chalices. It does obviously deal quite a lot of damage to all my minions that are here. With the 2-1 that I had, the AoE one, that's going to be able to clear the 2 minions that they have on the board, which is quite good for me. And then they end up passing, so that at the moment they don't really have any extra health and things like that. I'm just going to launch this Starship because obviously it will clear the 2 minions that are here with the 2-1 and then also the 1/3 that's in there, the missile pod that's in there. Play down my Totem because I do want to have access to more cards that are here. I could have potentially played down the Fairy Tale Garden in that situation as well, just because it would have obviously drawn me one of my Shudder block or something. But what I am looking for is being able to access the pop-up books, because that can obviously deal some face damage towards them. And the Shudder block would be useful as well to be able to get AoEs, get more AoEs in for my Incindius. So it's probably more correct doing it that way, just to be able to get the Totem out to be able to draw more draw a specific card. Because if you use the Fairy Tale Garden, you're only able to hit your one sort of card. So the Fairy Tale Garden probably was the better play, but I'm just trying to defend my play a little bit behind it. I end up getting the Defense Crystal, which is probably one of my best cards to be having as well. So that's another card that I did want to also draw into too. The pop-up book obviously will be able to deal lethal to them eventually. Since they do currently have the Divine Shield onto their hero, I just make sure that I get the Incindius minions into my deck, Incindius cards into my deck, because that's the only way that I'm really going to be able to make sure that damage is going through in addition to the damage of the minions on the board. They end up just playing down their Khadgar, which obviously gets them that quite useful tool, the quite useful weapon for them. And then they just use a Frostbolt on my Defense Crystal because they don't want me to be able to trade with it. And then they just clear, they end up dealing 6 damage to my face, which is probably the least preferred of the plays. Drawing into the Shudder block isn't a particularly good thing for me. And right now I'm just deciding how best I'm going to be able to deal with the opponent. So if I'm going to use Ceaseless now, or if I'm going to use a different sort of play behind that as well. I deal the incindius damage to face just so then I can get rid of the Divine Shield. And then putting down the Ceaseless means that I can access the Defense Crystal this turn. So I use it, and then I I launch the Defense Crystal as well, just to get access to more armor. Because if they did, once again, if they did have a Colossus, they would have had lethal going into that future turn. And then I just use Hero Power and Pop-Up Book to deal a bit more damage to them, but obviously it ends up having a win condition with Thrall's Gift too. So I've got a decent board here as well, which since I've gone a little bit wider with it, it means that my minions will be able to take out their ones as long as the weapon doesn't make any Divine Shields or things like that. Sorry, any freezes. So if they don't freeze, basically I win this next turn because I have the Ceaseless Expanse on the board. They end up getting Arcane Intellect, which obviously just ends up winning me the game as well, so they end up just conceding there. If they did get a Blizzard there, it would have been a bit more interesting in terms of what could have been done. Like, I could have potentially used the Fizzle that turn, but 2 turns ago, or I could have used the Fairy Tale Garden, but ultimately I just wanted to be able to get more defensive sort of stuff out as well, out of my deck, and Shadow Block isn't really very defensive anyway. So I am playing against a Hunter here, so if it's Trample Hunter or Grunter Hunter, you do want to make sure that you have the Defense Crystal and things. If it's Zerg Hunter, and you also want to make sure that you have your Triangulate to get lift off. If it's Zerg Hunter, you want to be having the, obviously the more tempo sort of play for it. I am quite a bit more scared of Grunter Hunter rather than Zerg Hunter, because at this point in time that I'm playing, I had played against a few Grunter Hunters, which should obviously be able to deal quite a lot of damage to my Starship pieces. I end up using the Triangulate here just to go face, so I still don't 100% know what deck I'm playing into because of the fact they didn't play a minion or card down on turn 1, which is quite often, Hunters do quite often have a turn 1 play. They do coin into Niall as well, which is quite scary considering they didn't have a turn 1 play and they'd used a coin there. So I am a bit concerned about my choices. I am a bit concerned about the matchup because obviously with Grunter Hunter, your little tokens get dealt with very easily. I also used the lift-off on the right-hand side, so they didn't know that I used Triangulate on the lift-off. Obviously, giving them as little knowledge as possible is the best idea. They more than likely would be able to assume that I got lift-off with it, but the less information, the better using to give them. I end up drawing into my Fizzle here, so it's not going to really mean too much at the moment, since I am also at this point in time thinking that it is going to be Zerg Hunter. It doesn't end up being Zerg Hunter, just so you know, but I just put a lock onto the Niall and then go face, so I want to be making sure that I can get... I need to make sure that I'm dealing as much damage as I can to them, because I still, once again, am thinking that it's Grunter Hunter. Luckily, they do show the Scout, which obviously reveals that it's not going to be Grunter Hunter or Trample Hunter. And they end up just using tracking, so they're getting quite a lot of extra value here. But since I do currently have Fizzle on my hand, I'm not too scared, as long as they don't have a way to get it out of my hand with things such as Dirty Rat. They trade into my minion, which I'm fine with, because they put down... I don't really think that was the correct play, since they put down the 2 taunts that I'd need to be able to trade into anyway. And then I use the pop-up book. I'm just deciding what the best one to do is into it. I just put it into the... the Discover one. The Scout, because with the Scout, I want to be able to clear that before he gets way too much value coming from it. Since I do have access to my Fizzle at the moment, I'm not extremely scared about that, but it is obviously important that I am clearing it as quick as possible to make sure they're not getting an exceptional amount of value coming from it. They end up using it, and obviously with the Grifter, it tells you which piece they end up getting, and they get 2 of them since that was a Discover mechanic for it, so I end up getting the damage piece into my hand. I use a lift off here to be able to get the extra cards and draw first. It's more than likely the way that I'm going to be trading is I'm going to be trading into the... I'm going to be just trading and making sure that I get the Grifter taken out. And building a bigger Starship in this value sort of matchup is, in general, going to be a better play, especially since I don't currently have any Medivacs in my pool. They get the Incindius down onto the board. I do have Thrall's Gift here, so that is a way that I can clear it. And inside my Starship, I do have the AoE, and I also have Raven there as well. So my idea behind this play is I'm hoping that my Starship launcher will be able to take out their incindius, because with the incindius, if I have poisonous, it will clear it. So I launched the Starship here. I could use the Hex, but I didn't really want to use the Hex in that situation. Obviously, I don't end up hitting the poisonous onto them, so I use the Hex here onto their incindius. And then I play down my SCV and just pass. So obviously playing the SCV gets a little bit of extra pressure, but it's reducing the cost down of my my pieces. They play down their second Incindius, which is quite scary for me, because of the fact that with the Incindius it is going to be dealing more and more damage throughout the turns, and they do have the Discover card at the moment too to be able to get more out of their deck. I use the Liftoff here because it could get me access to the Lock-On. I am running low on Terran cards, so it was quite likely that I would be hitting it. And then I end up clearing those minions and just going face with my... I use another Missile Pod and then I just go face with my cards. It puts them down to a really low health total, which can then... Jim Raynor would be able to clear, and the Incindius could be able to deal with relatively soon as well. So with them having such little health... I am thinking right now that I don't need to use the Fizzle. They do play down their other Scout, which means that if they get the health one, they'll be able to heal quite a lot back up. They did choose it quite quickly, so it's quite evident that they do end up getting the health one. They end up healing, and then they use a tracking. Obviously, tracking before healing would have been better in that situation. Actually, no, they're full on cards, so that was correct. And then they play down their spawning pool, and then they use the spawning pool to get the extra minion proc. Play down their Sea Giants, they have access to the locations. And then they're just using their heal card for them. So now with them having the Giants, I do need to make sure that I'm being quite careful with my minions that are on the board. I do launch the Starship here just to be able to see what ends up clearing for the minions that are here. I go face just because it obviously deals quite a bit with them. And then I play the Jim Raynor after I've launched my Starship, because since I've got so much damage currently sitting on the board, it is obviously best to be able to deal quite a lot to them. And I do have obviously have the two Starships in my pool to be able to use. It puts me up at a really high health total as well. So they don't have any access now to their Giants, and I still do have access to my Incindius, which I'll be able to use to push the last bit of damage if I need to. They could potentially use Ceaseless Expanse in this situation too, which could be a little bit scary for me, but obviously they end up having it and then they end up conceding. So that takes me to my final boss game, so because I'm getting 2 stars per game. So I end up playing against a Shaman in this game. I have Liftoff and I have the Gold Panner, so those are generally going to be 2 quite good cards to be having. I am on the coin this game, so I do want to be able to get my Gold Panner out on the first turn. And I do have access now to 2 Liftoffs as well. So going into future turns, I do want to be getting the access to those Liftoffs. They use a Lock-On and then they trade into my Gold Panner. So I end up just deciding what the best way is going to be about it. So I can either use the Gold Panner or the Totem. I'm just deciding. It doesn't really matter too much which way it is. So I end up just opting to have the Totem, and I draw an extra card. If they had a pop-up book or something, obviously it would be a bit worse, but it's not too bad for me in that situation. I use the Liftoff here. I could have always gone for the pop-up book plus Gold Panner play. Like, that would have done a similar sort of thing, but I opted obviously just for the Liftoff to get me more cards throughout my deck, since I do have the 2 Liftoffs in my hand already. They end up using their Gold Panners to get some more cards. I've got the SCV. I've also got a pop-up book as well here. And I end up playing down the Starport too, because it can trade quite well into those minions that are there. And since they've already used their Missile Pod, it's quite likely that I'll be able to trade decently into them the next turn. They use their ETC here, so I don't particularly know what would be inside the ETCs at this point in time, because a lot of the Infinite Shamans that I've played against haven't really had ETC. I'm assuming at this point in time that it is Triangulate, so it's not going to be really doing too much to me at the moment. They end up just drawing an extra card, obviously, with their Gold Panner. I use my Missile Pod to be able to then trade it into their Gold Panner. Oh, sorry, I trade into the ETC. and because I'm going to be able to launch the Starship, but I do actually launch the Starship first, just so I can see what ends up happening from it. The SCV, it didn't really matter too much which way it went, but if I did get poisonous, I would have missed 1 damage doing it that way. The Cutter ends up drawing them a card. I don't know why they waited quite a long time to do that, because Cutter plus Liftoff is in general going to be the best play a Shaman deck can do. I have the... Maybe they were trying to use a Hex, potentially. I'm not really sure. I do get access to my Liftoff here, so I end up using it. It gets me a lock-on, and I've already got the Missile Pot in my hand, so I can clear very easily into that board of theirs. I use my Starport to obviously get access to another Starpiece. Unfortunately, it is Medivac. But since my Starship piece is got Divine Shield and Wind Fury, it is posing quite a lot of damage towards them, so they are going to have to clear it. And it will be quite difficult for them to clear it too, because of the fact that it does have the Reborn as well. So they use their Roar of the Ocean to be able to deal the AoE to my board. I still obviously do have access to my Wind Fury at this point in time too, so I'm able to deal quite a bit of face damage to them if I need to. I play down the Cutler here because it could potentially get me, like lock on obviously, but it could have potentially got me something else. And use the other Cutler as well just to get me an extra card. And right now I'm just deciding what my best option is going to be. I end up using the lock on onto the Titan just to make sure that I am, obviously dealing with it. And right now I'm just deciding whether to launch my Starship or not. So my Starship doesn't particularly have too much useful stuff in it, but it does have the Missile Pod, which is the main piece that I'm thinking about. I launch it so it is able to clear the Titan that's there. But the thing that I'm also thinking about in that situation is with the Starship piece there, it is a terrible one because of the fact it has 2 Medivacs in it. They use a lock-on onto my 2-1 to be able to clear it, because they'll be able to use their Missile Pod that was inside their Starship. And then obviously, since they have Medivac, they're able to clear. They use a Dirty Rat onto me. It ends up hitting my Titan, unfortunately, for them, which is definitely not a great situation for them to have. It could have been Incindius or Fizzle, but it wasn't that likely that it was going to hit anything important to me. If it hit Fizzle, it probably would have been the worst situation, but in general, with the amount of health that they're on, I can try and push as much damage as I need to towards them, which would have meant it wasn't a big issue if they did since they did use the Dirty Rat onto me. I use the Triangulate here just so that I can, because I'm looking right now to be able to get more of the eruptions into my deck, to be able to deal more damage towards them. And I play down the Starport, so in that situation, it would have been better to use the Starport first and then use the Eruption, just because you can obviously get more information for your turn. So they end up taking a long time for their turn. They're just choosing what is the best play that's going to be for them. Since I do have quite a wide board and I have the Incindiuses onto the board, I'm not in too bad of a situation. They do play down their Fizzle, which means that they have access to the Triangulate turn. Since I've got the Incindius on the board with 7 of the Eruptions, it's quite good for me. They use the Ceaseless expanse to be able to clear my board, and then I end up drawing my Eruption. So I'm hoping for 3 here. I draw 1, I draw 2, and then I draw 3, which then makes it a guaranteed lethal using my Gem Raynor. And then I play the Gem Raynor down, and it will end up getting lethal for me. So, because with the Medivacs that were in the pool, it would have meant that it's a possibility that I wouldn't have had lethal that turn, because of the fact that the Medivacs would have potentially stopped the 4-2 from dealing the damage that was there. And then I end up getting the lethal, and it ends up being rank 4 legend for me. So if you've enjoyed this video, and if you're enjoying playing Infinite Shaman, please like and subscribe. I appreciate the feedback, I appreciate the support. I've really enjoyed providing these videos to you, and bye for now.